know you guys have been anxious to meet April. She's a breast cancer survivor that found out just 2 days after she found out she was pregnant, she found out she had breast cancer. Super crazy time. So I'm going to bring April on the show right now. April, how are you doing? Welcome to the broadcast. Let me make sure I unmute you. I'll do that again. Hey, April, welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
She had to say it twice, guys. So I met you through my friend Brandy, who I've known since like 1996 or so. She told me about you and your very unique journey through breast cancer. You know, we meet with breast cancer survivors every week, and everyone's story is very different. But I gotta tell you, April, this one might top it right here. So I'm really anxious for you to tell your story. Tell everybody how you came to know that you had breast cancer and how that all intertwined with finding out you were pregnant too.
Okay, so it was Martin Luther King weekend, and my husband had taken then I think he was what, 5 years old. He took our son over to his dad's house, to my husband's dad's, my father-in-law's house, for just like a guy's weekend. And I was sitting on the couch at home, and my left breast itched, and so I went like this to scratch it. When I pulled up, I felt something that felt like a lump, and it had definitely never been there before. And it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night on Friday. So I ended up I called my primary care physician. Their phones weren't working. So I ended up going up to their office on Saturday because I knew they're open on Saturday. Um, and they ended up being closed for the holiday weekend. So I had to wait till Tuesday. I called on Tuesday, got an appointment on Wednesday. And when I got there, she's like, "Oh, but you're trying to get pregnant," which we were, because I was like 36 and my husband was 40 or something like that. I don't even remember now. Um, and we wanted to have just one more kid, and so we were trying to get pregnant. And so when I told my primary care provider that we're trying to get pregnant also, she's like, "Okay, it's probably a cyst, you're probably pregnant, you just don't know it yet, but just in case, we'll send you for an ultrasound." But she said on the outside it feels really smooth, and cancer doesn't feel smooth, but just to be safe, we'll go ahead and send you. So they scheduled me for an ultrasound the next day, and they said the same thing. They're like, "Oh, you're pregnant, you just don't know it yet, so but we'll go ahead and do that. Like, we'll schedule you for a biopsy." And so they scheduled me for a biopsy the following Monday or Tuesday, I think it was. And then now I can't even remember anymore. Monday or Tuesday of that same week, like the following week, I found out I was pregnant. I really honestly wasn't really concerned because everybody said that it didn't seem like it was cancer. And they said it's a pregnancy symptom is to develop cysts on your breasts. So I didn't think anything of it. And then, so I had my biopsy on Tuesday, and by then I had found out I was pregnant. And they're like, "Oh, yes, we knew." But they're like, "We'll still do it anyways, just because you're already here." And so they did it. And then on Thursday, I was at work, and the doctor called, and she's like, "Do you have a moment?" I was like, "Oh no." And so I knew based on the phone number, like what city it was coming from, just because I live close by. And I knew exactly what it was going to be. And I sat down, and she was like, "You have breast cancer, and you have the most aggressive kind, which is triple negative. So you need to get this removed immediately." And so I was like, "Okay." So I grabbed my stuff and headed for the door. I was at work, and I bolted out the door, and I was like, "Okay, I got to go." I told my employees, I I don't know when I'm going to be back. Just text me if you need anything. So that was kind of that. And from there, yeah, the next week was crazy. Yes, I did a lot of research. But basically, so it was Thursday that I found out that I had breast cancer. And my primary care provider and me and my husband and my insurance company all started making phone calls trying to make doctor's appointments. So Thursday I found out I had breast cancer. Friday we met the breast surgeon. Monday we met the oncologist. Tuesday we met the OB. My old OB had retired from our older son, so we had a new OB. We met the OB, got to see the baby. You're not supposed to get to see the baby until 8 weeks, but we got to see him at 6 weeks. They wanted to make sure that they knew how far along we were. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, I had the pre-op where they do the thing where they check your lymph nodes to see what lymph nodes you drain into. And Thursday, I had the mastectomy on Valentine's Day. I did a lot of research, but I didn't at the same time because there was so much going on over those few days. But I watched a little bit of like stuff on YouTube and stuff, but I don't know. I just really didn't research that much. I didn't really want to. So I don't remember when I found out that it was triple negative. But by the time I had all the details, it had already been removed. So I did have a moment of panic, but not as much as you would think, because everything happened so quick. Because I was pregnant, they wanted to get the surgery done quick. There wasn't anything that they could do, because we were so early in the pregnancy. I was only, I think, 6 weeks pregnant when I had the mastectomy. You can't see the heartbeat on an ultrasound. You can see it on an internal one, but not an external one. So there was no way to monitor the baby's heart rate. The only thing they did differently is there was one medicine that they couldn't give me. I guess there's one like on your way to surgery that makes you a little loopy and kind of relaxes you before they give you the full anesthesia. They couldn't give you that because it causes birth defects. So other than that, there was not really anything they could do with it being so early in the pregnancy.
Gotcha. I mean, I don't know. I would be really scared about all of that. And I mean, but like you said, it happened really fast. It's probably almost good that it did happen really fast because it didn't give you a lot of time to think or fixate on, all the risks or exactly what was going on with the breast cancer and everything like that. So you had a double mastectomy. Did you do reconstruction?
Well, they would only do a single mastectomy, because they wanted to limit the baby's exposure to anesthesia. So they did a single mastectomy with no reconstruction while I was pregnant. And then after I was pregnant, I had the DIEP flap. So they did the other side mastectomy, in January of this year. And then they did the DIEP flap on both sides at that time.
And you were young when you were diagnosed, right? So, I mean, because they consider anything under 50 as being young. What was your exact age when you were diagnosed?
36 or 37. I can't, I think 37, 36. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember how old I am right now.
Gosh, man, and this is all so fresh even still. It's
Uh-huh.
crazy. Because you were just telling me earlier, you're like, yeah, my 1 year old, blah blah blah. I was like, wait a minute, that's the 1 year old, the 1 year
Yeah.
old. Gosh, that's so crazy. So after that, like, did they want you to do chemo or anything like that?
Yes. So even though, so in the middle of surgery, my surgeon came out because I had my mom, my husband, my aunt, and my uncle, like all in the waiting room waiting. Back before COVID, when you could have visitors, they were all in the waiting room waiting to hear the results because they couldn't do any scans because I was pregnant. So they didn't know if it had spread or anything. And so they were waiting on the surgery to find out if it had gotten into the lymph nodes. And so the surgeon came out in the middle of surgery and said, no, it had not spread. So it was just the one lump, and it was gone. And so basically, let me add something. The pregnancy cyst thing that they had been telling me at the beginning was actually true. So my surgeon said when they took it out, it had like some kind of like cystic property around it. So what that totally means, I don't know. All I know is I had never felt it before, and I would have felt it before. So I think it
Yeah,
was still a pregnancy thing that popped up that
right.
either like surrounded it or added to it so I could feel it or something like that.
Wow, what
But
a
yes,
blessing in disguise. You
yes,
know what I mean? I mean, for other people who may not be aware, you get it's very common to get fibroid cysts, and from what you're telling me, it's common to get them as a result of pregnancy. I know that
mm,
it's it happens a lot of times in association with a woman's period and things like that as well. And so, like, I had fibrocystic breasts before I was diagnosed, and it's actually a risk factor having fibrocystic breasts. But you, like you were saying, you can also get those, and it's important, for everybody watching to know, hey, um, no matter what kind of a cyst or lump or anything that you find, it's very important for you to have it checked out because you never know. And especially in your scenario where, it was kind of trying to hide it a little bit or trying to tell you at the same time, hey,
right,
look at me, I'm over here, right?
right. Yeah, and so we did have to do chemo, and I was kind of confused as to why I had to do chemo because they said that the surgery removed it all. But my oncologist said that basically the surgery takes it out, but the chemo cleans it up to make sure that if it did get into the bloodstream or the lymph system or however it works, the chemo will take care of it. And so they had me start chemo at 14 and a half weeks pregnant. I had 4 rounds of AC and 12 rounds of Taxol. I went into labor, I think 5 times
Oh my
during that
gosh.
time. So, but yeah, I finished. I had to have 2 blood transfusions while I was in AC, just because that's hard on the body by itself, and then when you compound that with a pregnancy, I had to have the 2 blood transfusions. So, but after those, I felt great. The Taxol was not so bad, but I went into labor finally for I think like the 5th time, 2 days after. No, my water broke. 2 days after I finished chemo. So I actually had the baby 2 days after finishing chemo.
What is the deal with the 2 days thing, man? 2 days before you're
I
diagnosed
know.
and then 2 days after finishing chemo. That's crazy. I mean, like literally, um, that's
It's
so,
like bookended.
I know it really is, right? That's so weird, man. Wow. So I assume that you plan once that baby is old enough, you're going to tell them this whole story, huh?
Yes, of course. We didn't tell our son. He was 5 at the time.
Uh,
He knew I was pregnant. He knew I had had surgery, so he knew he needed to be careful with me. I did lose my hair, but we just told him that I had to shave my head for some medicine I had to take. But I had a wig that was very similar, and most people didn't even realize it was a wig. So, but other than that, like it was, he was pretty unimpacted by it. But yeah, definitely
that's
gonna tell the baby when
Yeah,
he's old enough to
that
understand.
no doubt. I mean, it's like a miracle baby, really, when you think of it. I'd seen, I remember a little while back, somebody had posted something similar where they were going through chemo and they had the baby in the middle of their chemo, and it's just the
Mhm.
craziest picture to see this woman in the hospital bed holding her baby, and she's bald from chemo. It's just like, gosh, it's just very powerful, you know. I bet you were just counting your blessings the whole time. How was this on your husband? Was he just like freaking out completely or what?
Not really. He was he was upset when we first found it, but he's just calm and kind of did whatever I needed him to do and just was there for me when I needed. But I went to chemo by myself and stuff just because my center didn't have room for guests to come along. So I went to those by myself and it was fine, but he was good. He was saving his time off for when we had the baby. So
Oh, wow. I'm glad that he wasn't like panicked or anything. It sounded like he was a good solid rock
yeah,
for
he's pretty
you.
calm.
That's really cool. That's very cool. So, what's happening right now? Are you still going to your oncologist? I would assume pretty frequently since it's still
Mhm.
really fresh. So, how often are you going to your oncologist?
Every 3 months. My breast surgeon, I go every 6 months now. So tomorrow is, yeah, I think it's tomorrow is 1 year post chemo. Um, so I had my 1 year follow up yesterday. I have like this much hair. That's about five, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches of hair. I've been cutting it off on the bottom. Um, but yeah, I've been going to the oncologist about I think every 3 months. So, and
Gotcha.
reconstruction is done. So I'm just waiting on the tattoos for
That
that.
that's really cool. That's cool. I mean, and that's quick, really, honestly, because I know a lot of women who've gone through breast cancer and they're still going through various stages of reconstruction, like
Mhm.
whether like if they had an issue the first time around or just something. It nearly always takes a couple of years. I've seen like very frequently. So you're really lucky to get that far along that quickly. So are they doing any screening for you right now? Like are they doing any like chest x-rays or any other like PET scans or any other kind of scans at this time, or are they just like physical exams when you go in?
Physical exams and blood work is all that my oncologist believes in. There is a risk when you do more scanning that you can cause more harm. Or not, I don't. That might not be the right word. That there is some concern that like giving more radiation when it's not necessary. And so, plus, I think a lot of insurance companies don't like to pay for it. So my oncologist doesn't believe in doing scans unless there's a need for one. One of the things she says to look out for is like pain in your bone, like in the middle of your bone, like not in the joints or something like that. So if I had something like that or something that showed up on the blood work, she would. But I have had a couple other scans for other reasons, and she's gotten those results back and analyzed them. So I didn't have the scans for the cancer checks, but I had a couple. I've had two since all of this. One for my surgery and one for I thought I was having like appendicitis or something. So they did a complete scan and there was nothing. So
That's cool. I'm familiar with the whole getting other scans and sharing it with my oncologist and all that stuff like that. I did a body scan where they'll find all kinds of cysts all over your body because it's very common to have fibroid cysts all throughout. And so I've chased a couple of those, down some rabbit holes, and
Hmm.
I even had some scans this week. And it's funny because I don't know if you experienced this with those scans that you did about your appendix or where you did the body scan, but what happens for me is like honestly, I don't like sit around and think about being worried that I'm going to have recurrence. I really don't because I mean, you could just get engulfed in that. So I
Yeah.
just I just cruise along and whatever, and I don't really think about it. But then there's always some point like either in a hospitalization or a scan or whatever, where it just sort of like sideswipes me. So like for example, this week, I had a CT done, and so the doctor called and left a message, and she was like, "Hey, can you give me a call? I need to go over." And I was like, "Oh!" And it like it just immediately like back to 10 years ago for me, where it's like, well, why didn't they just leave it? Like it would have been easy for her to say, "You don't have a hernia," or "You do have a hernia." Like that's not a big deal.
Right.
You could just leave that in a message. But she didn't, and I was like, and so all of a sudden it like hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was panicked, and I felt just like I did back then, where you're waiting for that callback and you're not sure what the results are or whatever. But I don't know if you experience that when you had your scans, a little bit of anxiety.
I didn't, and so when I went to the emergency room for the appendix thing, and the doctor came in before they sent me for the scan, and he's like, "We're just gonna send you back there. We're gonna check for everything. We're gonna make sure you don't have any metastatic lesions and blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, no, oh, no, we're not checking for that today.
No kidding! Oh my gosh! And they're just like, "What?" Yeah, because
It
well,
just like
because
rolled off his tongue.
yeah, well, because every time you get people who don't have never had cancer don't know this, but obviously anytime you fill out this paperwork, there's that question where they ask you, have you ever had cancer? They ask you all the time. And so then they do treat you slightly different. They just do. I
Hmm.
think like the scan that I did yesterday, I think they did a lot more of the contrast and all that. It's like they did, I felt like they did a lot more than they really needed
Yeah.
to. And like one time I cracked a rib way up high from lifting something, if you can believe that, and it was really heavy, and I broke a rib. And when I told them that that was the same side that I had breast cancer, or he asked me what side do you have breast cancer, I said here, and then it was again that whole panic because he just got this look, and he's like, "Well, I want to do some," and I'm like, "Oh crap, what is happening?"
Yeah.
It just feels like you're at the top of the hill on the roller coaster. You're like, "Oh no." So
Exactly.
it's just one of those things that I think as a breast cancer survivor, you just like we were saying, you just try to live your life and cruise forward. You can't get engulfed in it or whatever. But I think it's always one of those things going to be kind of in the back of the mind in your mind where it's going to just kind of hit you sometimes. And I hate that, but we've got our breast cancer survivor sisters to go to about that, which I definitely did yesterday. I was texting one of my friends the whole time, but we have that group too, and you're part of the breast cancer survivor group. It's called Survivors Rock, a breast cancer kids ticket community, where we have a bunch of breast cancer survivors there. And so we could go there and chat about any of our experiences and things like that. There's a lot of really great groups on Facebook. I don't know if you utilize them very much, but man, I find that to be super helpful to have women out there to share experiences with.
Yeah, I'm in a few of them, and they make, it definitely makes you feel a lot better to be
Yeah.
in those groups and know that there's other people going through it.
Yeah, yeah. You got your like I had like a mentor person when I first got diagnosed that I always kind of went to about stuff, and it was just really important for me to have that. So as I mentioned to you earlier today when we chatted, I always like to ask breast cancer survivors when they join the show if there was something positive that they felt that they took away from the breast cancer experience. Can you tell us if you had something like that?
Got a baby out of it.
That's a pretty good one, I'd say.
Yeah, well, aside from that, it did make me actually like slow down and rest, which I never do. But as soon as I was ready, and it's kind of funny because once I finally felt like getting back at it again, COVID hit. So, but I'm looking forward to having energy and things being open again in the near future.
Amen to that, man. And we got to be careful, especially with you being so close to when you had your treatment and everything. Definitely be careful out there and, stay safe. I know it's a crazy, crazy world right now. And, you know, s- still connect with people like we're doing right now, which is cool. And, just staying in touch with people. I've been like FaceTiming all my friends anytime I want to talk to them so that it seems more like we're together. So I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're doing well. We're gonna have to have you on again in a few years after you're a little further out and check in and see how you're doing and how your son's doing and the whole family and just keep in touch through the years because it's an amazing story, April. It truly is.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you coming on tonight. I'm really glad that Brandy was able to introduce us. So we'll get together again soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, everybody. That was April, man. Another triple negative breast cancer survivor. Gosh, what a story, guys.